All right. Looks like we're live, I believe. Just pull this up a little ways because we are standing up here. Turn down this mic stand a little bit. Nothing to do shit. There we go. All right. Hi, internet. Yeah, sorry. Let me get this over here. Sorry, this is a little later than I had posted about. That's on me. Work is work, though, you know. Here's the thing. I've got an hour on the dot. This video, I'm standing currently, so I had to raise the microphone up because I'm standing. So I'm in like my standing desk position. So I just moved the mic up so I could talk to it a little bit better. It was hanging down a little bit lower than planned. But yeah, I have an hour. The video is 40 minutes long. We're going to watch it at 1.25 times speed, maybe 1.5. So I think we're probably going to go to 1.5 just because of the time frame. And yeah, I think we're just going to have to kind of just dive in here because we don't really have the time to waste. Hopefully the rest of the week I'll be able to be more close to the time of release. But that being said, let's go ahead and dive in because we know we're going to stop and we're going to chat about stuff. So here we go. Whoop, thank you guys for the heads up. I don't know why the audio... Oh, I know why. Hang on. There we go. Let's go back. You didn't miss much, but we'll start it over. Here we go.
Tell me all about the new things in the Monk.
There is so much. When we embarked on creating the new Player's Handbook, we knew that the Monk was going to get a lot of attention, partly because the Monk satisfaction scores over the last decade have often been, unfortunately, a bit low.
Yeah.
And the Monk, in terms of actual play numbers, has tended to be low as well. That combination told us this class needs some attention.
Yeah.
Now, every class got a lot of loving attention, but we knew the Monk was going to need some deep work done to it. And the deep work that we did in the Monk, similar to deep work we did in the Ranger, really amounts to this class and the Ranger largely being new classes. When you look at the features for the Monk, you look...
I agree that the Monk is in fact a new class, because I do think it is in a lot of aspects. Ranger, as we've talked about, not so much.
Down that list, you're going to see a lot of familiar friends, but also you're going to see some new things.
Also, I love this. This Dragonborn appears multiple times in the book. I love the art of this Dragonborn.
That is evident right away at first level when you dig into the main feature of the Monk at that level, martial arts, where you will find out that right away your selection of Monk weapons has been broadened to be all simple melee weapons, as well as martial melee weapons that have the light property. That's going to give you some...
That is a nice thing, martial weapons that have the light property. It does give you a lot more versatility in how you utilize your Monk weapons.
More flexibility than you had before. And we've also now made it so that you can now make, with this feature, a unarmed strike as a bonus action, regardless of what else you're doing on your turn. We used to have it so that the Monk had to set up their bonus action unarmed strike before they could do it. Now you don't need the setup. You just simply have always the option to make an unarmed strike as a bonus action.
This again goes into that concept we've talked about a bunch here of streamlining and removing kind of unnecessary hurdles for things. And again, also a lot of what they're talking about thus far, which isn't much because we stopped it pretty early in the video, is what we saw in the Unearthed Arcana. I would say that most of the Monk stuff, like a lot of the things we've seen in the most recent iteration of their Unearthed Arcana is very close to what you'll see in the final product. But they're going to distinguish those here. But that being able to just make that bonus action unarmed strike without having to deal with the attack action, whether you want to use something else as your action, whether that's casting a spell or what have you, if you have access to that kind of a thing, and still being able to just offhand throw a punch. And that's a level 1 monk feature, which is kind of nice, which could lead to wonky multi-classing stuff, but I dig it.
Now, there's even more going on here than that suggests, because we have, in the rules glossary, redesigned the unarmed strike itself. And this is a redesign that affects all characters, but will be especially felt by monk players because of how often monks make unarmed strikes. So it used to be in 2014 that the unarmed strike was just a way for anybody to deal some damage if they were without a weapon.
Yeah.
Now, monks and a few other characters were happy to make unarmed strikes because they often were very effective at them. What we've now done is we have made it so that when you make an unarmed strike, you now have 3 options of what it does. It can deal damage, like it did before, or you can try to initiate a grapple, or you can try to shove your target. Really what we've done is we've taken 3 different things that used to exist on their own in the game, dealing unarmed damage, grappling, and shoving, and we've combined them all into your unarmed strike.
You've kind of weapon masteried unarmed strikes, basically.
And we did this for everyone so that you had sort of a single place you could go to for the cool options for your character when you are throwing down with your fists, or you're wrestling, or you're just trying to push someone back. But we also wanted to make it so that the monk could really benefit from this, because this means, unlike in 2014, any time the monk is making an unarmed strike, including as a bonus action, that unarmed strike could be dealing damage, or it could be starting a grapple, or it could involve shoving somebody. That means the monk has an amount of tactical versatility that is with their unarmed strikes, which is akin to the tactical versatility that our weapon users have who are using weapon mastery.
Absolutely.
And don't forget that the monks still can use weapons, and those weapons can benefit. Actually, no, they actually removed that. I'm sorry. I think, or maybe they didn't. I don't know if the monks have access to weapon mastery, though they can get it through a feat. I think one of the iterations of the Unearthed Arcana, they had weapon mastery, and I think they may have taken it away. But I like this. It does add tactical versatility. Is it as much versatility as, say, weapon mastery? No. But if you are another character that isn't a monk and have ways to do cool things with unarmed strikes, whether that's a bonus action or otherwise, it works out well, right? If you're a fighter and you take the kind of unarmed fighting style, that still like makes you, while you're good at punching, also could make you good at grappling or shoving. And again, it's just kind of taking, like they said, 2 separate mechanics and kind of baking it into one existing mechanic. And that ultimately, I mean, probably in the long run, takes up less space on the page, right? Like you're removing extra rules and areas in the text where you can just kind of condense it all down. And I think that works ultimately. It makes things a little bit cleaner and more streamlined.
But a whole lot is hiding out in the unarmed strike itself and how it then combines with the monk's various abilities that use the unarmed strike. And that is evident right away in the martial arts feature.
You can just be pushing someone all around the map.
Yes. And also, boom, bonus action, starting a grapple.
Yeah.
Later on, as monks are able to get more and more unarmed strikes on their turn, each of those unarmed strikes could be a different one of these options.
Yeah.
You could be shoving one person, starting a grapple with another, punching them, kicking away the other person with the shove. It is really cinematic and exciting in actual play.
Yeah.
The monk, through this martial arts feature, can now use their dexterity rather than their strength to set the DCs for the new grappling and shove options that are inside the unarmed strike. So we wanted to make sure that the monk, who is most interested in having a high dexterity and secondarily a high wisdom, that they did not need to then sort of also need to have a really good strength. We wanted monks to be able to take that dexterity and have it even support them when they're using their grappling and shoving options within unarmed strike. Monks also
I'm not sure, Rob Delfranco. I'm not off the top of my head. I'm not really too sure the specifics of the most up-to-date version of the grappling rules. I think they changed it to saving throws, not checks. I thought, or maybe that was the initial version. But you do bring up a good point, like what's the point of athletics now if unarmed strike is how you initiate that? That'll be a good question. We'll definitely be answering that in the next couple of weeks when we're allowed to make the full versions. That might get its own like standalone short video about that. But Mark, can a 5th level Dragonborn make a breath weapon attack, a D10 plus level or make a breath weapon attack, then a weapon attack, then 2 unarmed strikes, yes, that does work. I'm not sure exactly. I don't remember how the Dragonborn breath weapon works currently, but yes, you can do a weapon attack, 2 unarmed strikes, and a breath weapon. I think technically the way the breath weapon is written, I can't remember if it's written 1 attack or like that you could just do multiple breath weapons in a round if you have multiple multiple attacks, but that would work. The Astral Self Monk is not in the UA, and it is not in the PHB.
Have their martial arts die. And this is the die that they use for their unarmed strikes. It's also the die that they can use with their monk weapons. And as they go up in level, at various times the die improves, which then means, of course, the damage of their unarmed strikes is improving, and the damage of their monk weapons is potentially improving, depending on what the weapons damage die was originally. Across the board, the martial arts die has been improved. And so it now starts at a D6 at level 1 and goes all the way up to a D12 at level 17, which means monks have just simply had a buff across the board on their damage output. Because we realized digging into the intricacies of the class's math that it just was not delivering the amount of damage that it should. And so
they also needed to increase the damage die when they made the unarmed strike fighting style allow you to be a better monk than a monk as a fighter earlier on.
So this is a rare case in this player's handbook of a class just simply getting
a flat-out damage buff.
Just a flat-out damage buff.
Yeah.
And we were able to do that because this is also the unusual class that has so much of its damage passing through a single feature, and in this case it's the martial arts feature. Whereas we have other classes where damage is instead routing through different weapons, it's routing through different spells, whereas with the monk, so much funnels through this level 1 feature. You ready for some more monk excitement?
Yes, I am ready for more monk excitement. I'm concerned that this is going to be a 3-hour video on monk.
So at level 2,
yeah.
we made it a level.
Wow! We got to level 2.
So in the new feature called Monk's Focus, this is a replacement for a feature that used to be called Key, and this has changed in way more than just name. It is, I mean, other than sort of some surface details of you get some points to spend on various things, there are so many functional changes in here that I'm glad just for that reason alone that the feature has a new name to signal to people.
Yeah.
Pay very close attention to this because in the new Monk's Focus, you have a pool of points that are now called focus points to spend not only on the options that are in this feature, but also a number of the options that appear later in the class. And anyone curious about using any monk material that was published prior to this book, anything that referred to key points in the past should essentially just be read as now referring to focus points. Inside this feature, you still have these sub-options that were there before.
It was discipline points. They switched it to focus points. I think at one point during the 2024 or 2023 summit, they were calling it spirit points. Like in our like little meeting that we had where they were kind of demoing that stuff or talking about it, I think they called it spirit points there. And then they went to discipline, and now they're on focus.
But they're really only here in name. Flurry of Blows, Patient Defense, and Step of the Wind. I say they're here really only in name because so much has changed functionally, because there have been major enhancements here. First, Patient Defense now lets you take the disengage action as a bonus action without spending any points.
You'll see this too, a lot of improvements of things not requiring you to spend points. And that's huge. Disengage as a bonus action, period.
Wow.
Before it required points.
Yeah.
Now, when you get Monk's Focus, you simply gain the ability to take the disengage action as a bonus action. Similarly, the Step of the Wind component of Monk's Focus lets you take the dash action as a bonus action.
Again, kind of making it on par with cunning action for the rogue.
So what these now do that relates to focus points is you can now use focus points to enhance them. So for example, you could spend a focus point with Patient Defense to, yes, take the disengage action as a bonus action, but also the dodge action at the same time. Similarly, Step of the Wind on its own lets you just take the dash action as a bonus action, or you can spend a focus point to be able to take the disengage and dash actions together and have your jump distance doubled for the rest of the turn.
Jeez.
And so now spending your focus points, rather than it unlocking the base ability, is instead about enhancing the base ability. Now, Flurry of Blows is the one of these 3 options within Monk's Focus that only has a version where you spend focus points on it.
Yeah.
And that is you spend a focus point to make 2 unarmed strikes as a bonus action. The reason why it doesn't have a sort of freebie version like patient, defense, and step of the wind.
Oh, you've already gotten that.
Exactly. You got the freebie version back at first level.
Yeah.
Because at first level, you now get the ability to just for free as a bonus action, boom, use your unarmed strike.
Yeah.
So now what Flurry of Blows does is let you enhance that by spending a focus point. I really love this new approach where, again, your focus points in a way are about amping up the volume rather than needing them to do your baseline.
You don't need them for the identity of this class. Yeah.
Exactly. Because now the way we've structured it, even if you're out of focus points, you can do all the baseline monk things.
Yeah.
And that is a point that I want to stress that I do really like and I agree with. Right? They mentioned the concept of this turning up the volume and basically allowing you to enhance those. Because realistically, think about how powerful that is. You're actually better at movement than any other class in the game, just base because of your increased movement. It would make sense that you'd be a better mover than the rogue, right? The rogue having cunning action at level 2, allowing it to dash, disengage, or hide as a bonus action. You now have the opportunity to meet the rogue where it's at minus the hide action. But you can also do things like, if I want to dash and disengage at the same time, which is huge because you're getting that all the benefits of disengage with still the double move, or to get the disengage and then also have the dodge action, right? Which is kind of a funky one, right? Because you're moving away without provoking attacks of opportunity, but you also have disadvantage on attacks against you anyway, and bonus to your your dexterity saving throws with the dodge action. So I guess if an enemy had Sentinel, that would be huge for that as well. But it is also, again, if you're totally spent on points, you can still do cool things.
And focus points now become just really cool spice. That's how you crank it up. Focus points are also critical for some of your higher level abilities that can be used only with focus points. Now, we also took to heart, though, that even though we had lessened how many of your baseline things require focus points, that monks have often felt focus point constrained and too constrained. Because we always want, when there is a limited resource in the game, for there to be a sense of limit. I mean, that's the point, for you to feel like your resource decisions matter, and for there to be that growing sense of danger as you see, you're basically your power tank going down toward empty, whether it's focus points or spell slots or something else. But even with all of that in mind, we felt we could give monks a little more breathing room. And so with that in mind, at level 2, they get a brand new feature after all this other brand new called Uncanny Metabolism. And what this lets the monk do is, when they roll initiative, just decide to regain all their expended focus points. You're getting this feature now at level 2. Now, once you use this feature, you can't do it again until you finish a long rest. But that means once per day, when a battle starts, you can just say, I got all my points back. And that's not all. You also regain a certain number of hit points when you do that. So this Uncanny Metabolism is you just drawing on your personal resources and saying, I'm ready for another fight. And that's probably going to keep you going for the rest of the adventuring day, or at least a good part of it.
Nice.
This is I could do this all day kind of a thing. But yeah, to your point and to Chat's point, right, this is a 2-level dip, gets you all of that. Just consider that. Not that we're really dealing too much in the world of multi-classing right now. But I think what they did with a lot of this stuff is also to consider potential backwards compatibility with old subclasses, right? They could have just increased the overall focus point pool, right? They could have made it at, your level plus your proficiency bonus, or your level plus your wisdom modifier, or whatever, right? Something like that. Because obviously we know your focus points are equal to your level. You could have done it that way. But instead of giving you more points, they gave you more things using less points, and then also the opportunity to get points back. And this is one of those features where I get into a fight. Now, remember, this could be at level 2, this is a useful feature, but at level 14, let's say, this is an arguably much more useful feature, right? I get into a fight at level 2, I use my 2 focus points, I do whatever I'm doing, I get into another fight, I get those 2 points back. Now, I do also get them back, I think, on a short rest anyway, but I also have an opportunity to get them back very quickly at the start of a fight. And it's nice because it's at the start, when you roll initiative, so you're juicing yourself up before that fight, so you don't have to, think about doing that before the fight or spend an action to do that or a bonus action to do that when you start. It just happens. And it comes with some extra healing. I don't remember the exact amount, but it is a nice little bump on top of everything else.
Now, when you get to level 3...
We're at level 3.
You now get deflect attacks, and this feature has been redesigned
So much better.
so that it is more versatile than it was before. This used to be the feature that gave you a chance of catching a projectile that was fired at you, and if you managed to zero out the damage completely, you then had the option of trying to hurl it back. And then there were some complexities of the nature of that projectile affected the damage that you were sending back. We wanted it to be easier and more fun for monks to use this ability. And so what we did is we now made it easier, just the whole operation, for the monk to figure out, how they reduce the damage. We no longer care about the physical quality of the thing that's hitting you. All we care about in this rule now is that it deals bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing damage. So whatever it is that's coming in, you can try to deflect it and reduce the damage. And then if you reduce it to 0, and that reduction, by the way, is you roll a d10 and you add your dexterity modifier and your monk level. And if all of that combined zeroes the damage out, you have the option of spending a focus point to then basically redirect the attack's force towards somebody else. And now that other target now has to make a saving throw, and if they fail, you get to do an amount of force damage to them based on your martial arts dice. And remember, your martial arts dice are way better than they used to be.
Yeah.
This feature gets even spicier at higher level, and I'm going to skip ahead because later on...
Eventually it's energy.
Yes. All the way at level 13, you get a feature now called Deflect Energy, where you can now use deflect attacks to deflect any damage type. No matter what it is, whatever energy is coming in, the monk with their preternatural abilities can use their focus to bounce that fire over there, deflect that wave of thunder towards somebody else. It's pretty badass.
Yeah, that's amazing.
In addition to...
I also like this. This is something that I'd been saying for a while, so I can't promise that it was my suggestion, because I definitely can't. But I had been suggesting for a long time removing it from missiles to making it attacks, because it always made sense to me. And I had toyed for a while about making this like a revamp to the Drunken Master Monk, that they could deflect any attacks. Like that was a special function of the Drunken Master. It was like a homebrew idea I'd had, where they can just kind of, Drunken Master style, like whoop, whoop, just redirect a punch to hit somebody else. But I like that this is just baked into the base monk feature, because let's be honest, the amount of times I feel like you were getting hit with missiles really depended on the DM, and like it would be pretty limited. But chances are, regardless of what level you are, some big monster is gonna hit you with a claw or a hammer or whatever. You fight the dragon claws or bites at you, and you could just be like, nope, and knock their face out of the way. Way cooler than like, oh, if the dragon shoots a bow at me, I'm good, and now it's even, again, dealing with other energy attacks as well, which is pretty cool.
Their damage output being improved, we have also looked at ways to improve their survivability. And that's evident in how their superior defense feature works at level 18. It is also evident in their disciplined survivor ability, which is what they can use to reroll saving throws. It's also especially evident at level 10 in their self-restoration ability, which is a new feature that combines elements that they used to have in other features, where when they get to the end of their turn, if they're charmed, frightened, or poisoned, again, this is at level 10, they can just say, no, I'm not. And before, this had an action economy cost associated with it. No, not anymore. Now just the monk, they get to the end of their turn, and it is literally this good. If they're charmed, frightened, or poisoned,
And I like that too. Again, it's just an end of the turn thing, so the enemy doesn't feel like they had no teeth in what they were doing, right? They did a cool thing. Here's our monk, Dragonborn monk again, another picture. But you're dealing. They did the thing. They poisoned you. They charmed you. Whatever. But you get to end it at the end of your turn. So yeah, you still have to suffer the condition for the turn, but you also didn't need to spend action economy to do it. So you could still maybe take an attack or whatever it is at disadvantage or what have you, but you do get the chance to just cleanse yourself of that condition at the end of the turn, which is very nice. But I do believe that they removed monks' poison immunity, which was a cool thing that monks had, but I think these new features kind of reflect that. We're going to take a look at the D&D Beyond article after this as well.
We really wanted monks to have this kind of superheroism in how not only they fight others, but also in how they're able to keep themselves alive. We also have adjusted in a level 10 feature called Heightened Focus what you can do with Flurry of Blows, Patient Defense, and Step of the Wind. So we already enhanced those three options back at level 2. But when you
This ability we're talking about here is huge.
Get to level 10, they all get even better. And we did this because these 3 options are so fundamental to the monk. One being about keeping themselves alive in the form of patient defense. Flurry of Blows is essentially their damage output option for their monk's focus, and Step of the Wind is their mobility option. And again, all 3 get better at level 10. In between, when they got those features back at level 2 and them getting improved at level 10, they also now have their Stunning Strike, which has been adjusted. Now, this is one of the only places in the monk where a feature's power got toned down a slight bit.
Right, yeah.
And we don't feel bad about it, given how much the monk has been buffed.
Yeah.
We've now made it so that
I didn't even consider, like, I know it's technically a nerf. Don't see it that way at all.
Stunning Strike can be used just once per turn, because there have been cases in the past 10 years where Stunning Strike can get a little out of hand if a monk player uses it over and over and over again.
Yeah.
But I think the sting of that limitation will pass very quickly when people realize that we've now made it that if the target, even if they succeed on their saving throw, they're still affected to a certain extent. So if they fail their saving throw against your Stunning Strike, they're stunned, as you would expect. If they succeed on their saving throw, their speed is halved until the start of your next turn, and the next attack roll made against them has advantage. So when you use Stunning Strike, it's going to have an effect on your target. And really, they're making a saving throw to find out what that effect is going to be. So in the end, Stunning Strike actually got buffed.
Yeah.
I like this change a lot, and I agree. I've talked about this a bunch, and I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but I've played 2 monks in 5th edition to like 15th plus level, right? So I've gotten probably more experience than a lot of folks on monks, and I know what they can and can't do. Now, again, my first monk, I never used Stunning Strike. I used it one time, and the enemy succeeded, and I never used it again. So it didn't really bother me that much. The second character, the second monk, I used Stunning Strike all the time. And there were times where I got in fights where I did kind of what they're saying, where I would Stunning Strike this guy, and then they're stunned, and then move over here and hit them, and I could shut 4 enemies down in a combat, essentially for a whole turn. And because Stunning Strike doesn't activate, doesn't end till the end of your next turn, at least in the current version, like, we could just wallop these guys and then just end the fight, and if I needed to, I'd just stun them again. Yeah, that was 4, at that point, key points to do so, but it was a huge combat effectiveness thing. This I like a lot better. It also doesn't make you feel bad if they save, because you're trying to do the cool thing, and if they do save, it's showing that you were putting some kind of sauce on that hit, right? You were doing something when you hit them to try and overcharge their nervous system in some way, right? I'm punching you and I'm trying to stun you, recognizing that there is something different about this punch, right? And in doing so, it makes sense that even if you save, something is a little bit off. So, like, yeah, it's cut their movement speed in half and advantage on the next attack, which could be your own attack, but you only get to do it once, a Stunning Strike once per turn. I think that's a perfectly reasonable trade-off, in my opinion.
It's really, we've limited how often you can use it.
That's perfect.
So on top of all of that,
Yeah.
monks, like everybody else, get Epic Boon at 19th level, and also then have some majorly enhanced subclasses.
One of my absolute favorite ones, just from the look of them and mix of healing and necrotic damage, is the Warrior of Mercy.
And this is a subclass that appeared for the first time in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, where it appeared with the name Way of Mercy. And people will see that all of the monk subclasses now have a naming pattern of Warrior of something.
Yeah.
It's the same subclass as before, just now with Warrior at the front instead of Way of. And in several of our classes, we have unified how that class's subclasses are named. When we get to the Sorcerer, we'll talk about how all their subclass names have been unified. And we've done that in a variety of places to not only get the names so that they're all structured the same way, but also to set up how we'll name the subclasses in future books. So the Warrior of Mercy, of the 4 monk subclasses in the book, is the one that has evolved the least, partly because
it's most recent in the new designs.
Exactly,
So, yeah.
It's the most recent. And so the main thing that has happened here with this monk, who's all about both help and harm, has been integrating it into the revised class. So otherwise, this is the subclass people know and love from Tasha's Cauldron, but now fully integrated into this completely redesigned monk class. But the subclass features themselves, other than some tweaks and wording to make it so that they fully integrate, it's what you saw the last time you played and enjoyed this subclass.
It's an incredibly fun subclass.
Now,
Yeah, so Way of Mercy, basically untouched. And I like Way of Mercy. I like the original version that was in the Unearthed Arcana long, long ago. That's actually the first monk that I played, was that version. I don't remember what it was called, but they basically gave them double the points of lay on hands, which was stupid good. It was basically, yeah, you had a paladin's pool of lay on hands, but instead of 5 points per level, it was 10 points per level. And you could deliver your lay on hands ability of healing essentially with your at a point with your flurry of blows. So you could bonus action heal people with basically lay on hands. So you could like reach out and touch 2 people. And again, at level 15, I had a pool of 150 points of healing. I understand why that totally didn't make it into the final version, and Mercy is a much parsed down version of that. But still, that one was a lot of fun. But anyway, let's keep going because the subclasses did get quite a bit of overhaul.
When we get to the other 3 subclasses, we have the Warrior of Shadow, we have the Warrior of the Elements, and the Warrior of the Open Hand. So the Warrior of the Elements completely replaces the Way of the 4 Elements. The Way of the 4 Elements, sadly, in terms of satisfaction, was often the lowest rated subclass in the 2014 Player's
Shocker.
Handbook.
Yeah.
And so looking at it, we realized the best path forward is to replace it.
Yeah.
And the Warrior of the Elements is a subclass that people got to see a draft of in the Unearthed Arcana process, and now the final version is here in the book. This is a monk who is all about channeling the elemental forces of the multiverse and using those elemental powers as part of their martial arts. And so you're going to see a number of really fun things here related to that. First off, these monks are able to increase the reach of all of their unarmed strikes as they use wind and water and fire and earth to extend their reach. So you can imagine, cool tendrils of water going out to make it so that this monk can punch someone like 10 feet over there.
Yeah.
And it's not Mr. Fantasticing or One Piecing over there with a stretchy punch. No, it's the elements themselves reaching out to extend their reach. We also give them, and you alluded to this, we give them a new cantrip, the Elementalism cantrip, that allows them to shape the elements around them, shape water, fire, earth, etc., so that
again, as I mentioned, Elementalism cantrip is just a nice, clean version of combining kind of control flames, shape water, mold earth, and gust all into one cantrip. It makes sense to give them that. And it also, it's for those of you who are looking for crazy, flashy, basically spell casting that the original Way of the 4 Elements monk had, that is gone. It is much more parsed down and simplistic, but I'm not sure. I mean, we all didn't like 4 Elements monk. We know that. They think they kind of distilled it down to some of the better maneuvers, if you will, like water whip and like fangs of the fire snake. Those, they kind of parse them down into just like, now you can have your unarmed strikes do a variety of elemental damage with reach with a couple extra things.
they can feel like they have some of this elemental magic even when they're outside combat. And when you get the subclass, because by the way, this is all right when you first get the subclass, you gain these benefits. You gain elementalism, you gain your extended reach, and you also are able to do your elemental strikes. And so whenever you hit somebody now with that extended reach that the elements are giving you, and you are dealing damage to them, you can first off change that damage type to a list, one of a list of damage types that we provide, all elementally themed. But then you can also force the target to make a saving throw, and if they fail, you can move them around the battlefield, as either wind is blowing them, or water is causing them to flow away, or fire is causing them to stumble back. Whichever element it is that you're deploying, you suddenly, with that extended reach, get to be like, no, you're here, you're now over there. So a lot of tactical fun is waiting for you right here at level 3 when you first get this subclass. Then when you get up to level 6, you gain the ability to essentially extend your elemental power to a greater distance. Now you'll be able to take a magic action, expend some focus points, and then cause an explosion of elemental power up to 120 feet away from you. And this is a 20-foot radius sphere explosion where you now deal damage, and it is based on your martial arts dice. And so this is something that will scale with you as your martial arts die gets better. So even better than we did with the Way of the Four Elements, we're giving you the ability to easily just bring some spectacular elemental.
It is very reminiscent of that feature that the Sun Soul Monk had, where they kind of do the Constitution-based Radiant Fireball ability. The sort of Kamehameha kind of thing that they had going. It's I'd have to check. I don't think it's crazy damage though. I think it's like 2 rolls or maybe 3 rolls or something of your martial arts die. We'll check the D&D Beyond article in case it says. It is nice that scales, because at a higher level it could be 2, if say it is 2, it could be 2d12, or if it's 3 it could be 3d12. I think it would be, now they said spend some focus points to use it. I don't recall, but I hope it's one of those like where it scales, right? Where it's like a d6 or 2d6 per focus point spent. So if I want to do 4 to do a fireball, I should be able to, or a lightning ball or what have you. I also don't know if it's just like it goes off or it persists, but that would be pretty cool.
Effects to the battlefield. And rather than expecting you to choose a particular element that you use all the time, the theme of the Way of the Elements, and it's partly why we changed the name of the subclass, rather the Warrior of the Elements, is you are tapping into the whole elemental chaos. You're not necessarily tied to any particular elemental plane. Instead, you're tapping into the chaotic mixture of all of them, which is one of the reasons why we made it so that you can choose every time you use these abilities to pick a different one of the damage types that are available here. It's also why even in the art for this subclass, you'll see in the monk's image that she is channeling multiple different elements all at the same time, rather than just being a monk of fire or earth or wind or what have you. We also have made it so that while you have those benefits going of that extended reach and you're using your elemental strikes, which I should have mentioned earlier, you have to actually activate. They're not on all the time.
Right.
You have to spend focus points to turn them on. And so when you're just going about your day, you don't have water extending from your hand.
Distracting.
But yeah, if you use focus points to turn on these powers, well, that power that you've turned on just gets better and better as you go up in level. So once you reach level 11, whenever you've activated your elemental attunement, that's the name of the feature that gives you that extended reach and those elemental strikes, now you also have a fly speed and a swim speed because you are carried aloft by the winds,
right.
you are pushed along by the waters, so now you have supreme mobility on top of the outstanding mobility that monks already have. Then at level 17, you
just remember that you are a monk, so your increased speed will affect those swim and fly speeds.
get a feature called Elemental Epitome, and this also improves your elemental attunement ability. You now get an elemental damage resistance that you get to choose, and you get to choose it at the start of every one of your turns. So,
oh, wow.
So every
nice.
time your turn starts, you just get to decide if that turn, or rather until the start of your next turn, you have resistance to acid, cold, fire, lightning, or thunder. And in certain battles, that could be really useful to be able to just keep switching
Sounds like Earth is going to be acid for this.
those.
Yeah.
Also, we've made it so that when you use your Step of the Wind, while your elemental attunement is going, your speed increases, so now you're even faster. And as you move around the battlefield, you can cause damage to foes that you're moving by because of all this elemental power that is swirling around you. In many ways, you can almost imagine the Warrior of the Elements as the cousin of the Circle of the Sea Druid,
right.
Because both of them are going to have these sort of destructive auras around them, but they use them in very different ways, although they can, the two of them, fly and swim together. That's why I kind of think of them as buddies. You also, in this capstone ability, have the option to just once per turn, deal some extra damage because of all of this elemental power that is swirling around you. And so all of these features combined make the Warrior of the Elements this elemental powerhouse who's going to be moving around quickly on the battlefield.
Yeah, very much like a Chardalon stride.
Who has not only an extended reach, but also a built-in magical ranged ability to blow up an area, I think going to be super exciting.
So now let's talk about the Warrior of Shadow. I've played this.
This is like a sleeper pick for me. I don't feel like I've seen anybody actually at a table pick a Shadow Monk. And I really wanted to play one in Baldur's Gate, but open hand is just so much better. And this might be the opportunity. I don't know if I want to play a monk a third time, but if I do, it might be this. Who knows?
Subclass quite a bit. This has had significant quality of life improvements, and it makes you even more dangerous. If you wanted that Shadowfell, the threat in the darkness feeling, this is the subclass for you.
Yeah, we wanted to make it so that the Warrior of Shadow was even more suffused by shadow than it was before. And one of the ways that we did that is we preserved the ability for this subclass to cast the darkness spell, but now we made it so that you can see in that darkness. Anyone who has used that spell, you know that part of its power is very few creatures in the game can see through that darkness.
Yeah.
And so being able to create that darkness and see in it, and then later use your own darkness that you've created to fuel your shadow step, the teleportation that these monks get that relies on you being in dim light or darkness. You can start creating synergies with yourself that are just super fun.
Yeah. The advantages you get by being able to see someone in the darkness and them not being able to see you are extreme.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, you now are, in many ways, the scary companion to the assassin rogue.
Yeah.
It just as the warrior of the elements is the buddy of the Circle of the Sea druid, the warrior of shadow and the monk is definitely the buddy of the assassin. And
right.
I could see these two being a really scary pair hunting down the bad guys.
Maybe they didn't want to give them the spells because they didn't want the shadow monk to have access to silence so he could shut down the ranger by accident.
We have taken that shadow step ability, which is so core to the identity of the warrior shadow, preserved it, but then improved it at level 11 with improved shadow step. We've now made it so that when you use your shadow step, you now have the option of expending a focus point to make it so that you are not required to start or end the teleportation in dim light or darkness.
Yeah.
And because we found that as cool as shadow step has always been, one of the most difficult aspects of it were being in an adventuring context where there is no dim light or darkness.
Yeah.
And now we've sort of double solved for this here by giving you this darkness you can create and see in, so you can use that.
Because if you are physically in the light, that's still an issue.
Yes. And we wanted to make sure you could always use your core ability that's a part of this subclass. But there's more. In improved shadow step, we've also made it so that if you spend that focus point, you not only don't have to start or end in dim light or darkness, but as part of the same bonus action when you teleport, hey, you also get to make an unarmed strike immediately after you teleport. So you can just suddenly appear next to somebody
cleaner.
And kabam.
Yeah.
And yes, whoever said 3.5 Shadow Dancer, very much so.
Finally, at level 17, we have a much improved Cloak of Shadows ability. And this not only lets you turn invisible, but it also makes you partially incorporeal, so that now you can pass through occupied spaces as if they were difficult terrain. And you can use your Flurry of Blows, which is normally costs a focus point to make 2 unarmed strikes as a bonus action. You can now use that while you're in this limited time Cloak of Shadows form. You can use that Flurry of Blows without spending any focus points. Now, instead, you are spending focus points to activate your Cloak of Shadows.
Did we hear that, though? So focus points to activate Cloak of Shadows, but now, while it's active, no focus point expenditure for Flurry of Blows, which is 3 attacks, I believe, at this point.
But once you've activated it, you can just be this shadowy force moving around and punching or kicking the heck out of things. I
mean, obviously, this has nice synergy with the Gloomstalker Ranger as well as the Assassin, but I would either like to see these two together or fighting each other. The Fey Patron Warlock teleporting all over the battlefield and the Shadow Monk doing the same thing, and they're just trying to get at each other. It's like a constant chess match.
It's not a PvP game.
But
it could be.
It's in my head. Not when I play.
It's a co-op
But
game.
it's fun. Listen, sometimes the best adventures start off with everyone not getting along. Guardians of the Galaxy.
But
listen, I got to give Todd credit. Well, PvP games can be a lot of fun.
Anyone who is like you, what I would encourage is absolutely.
What's going to come next?
Oh, no. It's a DMing tip.
Yeah.
Absolutely take inspiration from classes and subclasses for the monsters that you create.
Yeah.
Because, there are some really cool abilities here that you absolutely could riff on in a monster or NPC. And then you can absolutely create some of those awesome moments that you're thinking of.
Yeah. And that brings us to the final warrior.
Yes, the Warrior of the Open Hand. The Warrior of the Open Hand, we can kind of
You want to talk about something that didn't really need a glow up but got one?
think of as the most monkish of the monks, really leans into the core kit of the class, the unarmed strikes, the high mobility. And what we wanted to do here is just make sure it was delivering those goods in as fun a way as possible. We took, for instance, Wholeness of Body at level 6. And before, this was a way for this monk to heal himself. It took a whole action. Now it's a bonus action. So we want you to be able to just weave this into what the other things you're doing on your turn. And you can also now use this multiple times per day. And this is a part of our effort to...
I think the healing was reduced, though, compared to what the old version was.
Enhance monk survivability. We also have a brand new feature in the Warrior of the Open Hand called Fleet Step. And what this feature does is whenever you take a bonus action to do anything other than Step of the Wind, you can also use Step of the Wind immediately after that bonus action. So I was just telling you about, these monks can now heal themselves as a bonus action. Well, the very next feature combos with that, and it means even if you use your bonus action to heal yourself, you can also Step of the Wind.
Yeah.
And that's because we wanted, while some of the other monk subclasses are, again, getting things like flight or teleportation, we wanted these to be the monks who are just zipping around the battlefield.
Yeah.
And even when they're like patching themselves up, it's like, oh my gosh, how fast is she running?
Yeah.
And then finally, we revised Quivering Palm. This was the I touch you, and then at some point you may or may die. We've now made it so that it now deals a truckload of damage on a failed save and a smaller truckload of damage on a successful one. It does no longer just instantly zero a creature out. This was one of the only other places in the Monk where we needed to adjust the power down a little bit, because Quivering Palm before essentially had kind of the theoretical possibility to deal infinite damage, because it could reduce any creature, no matter how high their hit point pool was, down to 0.
Yeah.
And this was just not scaling well, particularly with some of the higher level encounters that we want high level characters to be able to have, and have those encounters still be a challenge.
Yeah.
So what we did, even though we took away the deal infinite damage portion of Quivering Palm, we did make sure that the damage it deals is, as I said, a truckload.
Okay. Perfect.
So
yeah, it is not as crazy as it used to be, just flat out insta kill. But you know what? That again, see. All right, let's finish the video, then we'll talk.
all of these things together amount to a class that has been reimagined, redeveloped.
Yes.
We've play tested the heck out of it, and it is a ton of fun.
When you pre-order the digital physical bundle, you also get an
watch till the
exclusive
end,
digital
'cause
Gold
apparently
Dragon
there's
Mini
more stuff
for
after
our
this.
3D virtual tabletop. The Dragons of D&D Digital Art Book, 15 dice sets, 34 frames, and 15 backdrops. And if you pre-order the digital 2024 Player's Handbook on D&D Beyond, you get exclusive bonuses. 12 sets of digital dice representing each class, 10 new frames, and 5 new backdrops. And all of those Player's Handbook bonuses are available right now on D&D Beyond. You can find the links to all of that in this video description.
Thank you so much for watching. We have a ton of video content coming out about the new Player's Handbook and all the new core rulebooks, the new Monster Manual, the new Dungeon Master's Guide. So be sure to check.
All right, none of that changed. All right, so let me go ahead and pull up the D&D Beyond article. We'll see what that has to say. Where is the monk one? Monk. Okay, let me pull up you guys so you can see this. They did. Here we go. Okay. Martial arts. What's new? All simple weapons are now considered monk weapons, as well as martial weapons with the light property. We heard that. Starts at a D6, goes to a D12. Can use dexterity in place of strength when you grapple or shove, because that's the new unarmed strike rule. Monk's focus at 2. Disengage is a bonus action for free. Focus point to disengage and dodge. Step of the wind. Dash is a bonus action for free, or focus point to disengage and dash. Uncanny metabolism. Once per long rest, regain all focus points when you roll initiative. There is some healing baked in here. They didn't talk about that specifically. Deflect attacks. Reduce the damage of melee or ranged attacks that deal bludgeoning, piercing, slashing by a D10 plus dex plus monk level. If it's 0, you can reduce it. Melee attacks can be directed at a creature within 5 feet. Ranged attacks with a creature within 60 feet. Target makes a dexterity saving throw, takes damage equal to 2 rolls of your martial arts die plus your dex mod. We have our subclasses. We'll talk about what happens there, but you can see very clearly Shadow has Pass Without Trace and Silence removed. Stunning trick requires a monk weapon or stunning or unarmed strike. Stun condition lasts until the start of your next turn rather than the end. Can only be used once per turn, and then on a successful save, the target has its speed halved and advantage on the next attack against it. Again, this could be you self-setting up advantage for yourself. Again, which you have if you stun them anyway, but either way. Empowered strike. This used to be an option that you used to get, I think, at level 6 that made your unarmed strikes now magical for the purposes of overcoming damage resistance. As we've seen kind of across the board, they've removed, from what we've seen so far anyway, any ability that we've seen in the game that had language like that. That said, XYZ is now magical for the purposes of overcoming damage resistance, and instead allow you to deal some other type of damage. For example, the monks can now choose to do force damage instead of bludgeoning damage, but if they were to do bludgeoning damage and something were to have resistance to bludgeoning damage, it would still be affected by that. I think we saw this with the Moon Druid, I believe, gets this ability, and it does radiant damage, as opposed to, slashing whatever the animal form would be. So that's, again, a change. Heightens focus at 10, improved flurry of blows. It's now 3 attacks, so that means at level 10, a monk can make 5 strikes for a singular focus point. We can make 2 for our base attack action and 3 as a bonus action. Again, reminder here at level 10, those are each dealing a d8, one more level at level 11. That will be all d10s, so that's potentially 5d10 in a turn. Reminder that this is not including subclass related features and the fact that one of those could be a stunning strike. So in theory, if you start with stunning strike and you hit and you connect and that happens and they are stunned, every subsequent attack, which could be 4 more attacks, all of which are dealing force damage, could also be made, those final 4 attacks all made at advantage. Deflect energy, again at let's go back here. Self-restoration, remove the charmed, frightened, or poison condition on you at the end of your turn. You now don't need food or drink. Food or drink don't cause you exhaustion, so that's part of the process. You're supposed to have food and drink every day. Otherwise, you'll suffer a level of exhaustion. That no longer is a thing for you. Deflect attacks, which again now works on melee and ranged attacks, can now deflect any type of damage. So if somebody shoots a firebolt at you or an eldritch blast, you can just like knock that back, possibly reduce it to 0, and then possibly send it back at them, which is pretty cool. Perfect focus at 15. If you don't use uncanny metabolism, which remember, uncanny metabolism is once per long rest when you roll initiative, regain all focus points. And again, this is important. At 15, if you don't use uncanny metabolism and have fewer than 4 focus points, you get 4 focus points when you roll initiative. So not only do you get focus points back on a short rest, I'm pretty sure, you have an ability at level 2 that when you roll initiative, you can just get them all back. And then at 15, any fight you get into, you will always have a minimum 4 focus points, which is a really nice combo with all of that. Superior defense at 18, spend 3 focus points to get resistance till the start of your next turn to all damage types except for force for 1 minute. An epic boon, and then the amazing body and mind feature at level 20, increasing your wisdom and dexterity score by 4 up to a maximum of 25. So we don't really have too much to talk about in here. Oh, here it is, the healing. Additionally, when you use this feature, you regain hit points equal to your monk level plus your martial arts die. So when you use Uncanny Metabolism to get all your focus points back, you're going to roll your martial arts die, whatever it happens to be, d6 all the way up to a d12, and then add your monk level to that, and that's just free hit points. Again, on the roll of initiative, which is nice to give you possibly a little extra HP and all your points back when you roll into a new fight. It is, let's see, damage is reduced depending on if you make either 5 or 60 feet, and force them to make a saving throw against damage based on your martial arts die plus your dexterity modifier. So it's not too much damage, but again, it's funny that someone could throw a dagger at you if you're at higher level, and you could throw the dagger back at them and do a d12, which is kind of funny. All right, let's take a look at the subclasses here. A Warrior of Mercy. The fewest changes, familiar features such as Hand of Harm, Implements of Mercy. Hand of Healing, for example, is now classified as a magic action and a new action classification to improve rules clarity. The most significant change is the Flurry of Healing and Harm can now be used a number of times per long rest equal to your Wisdom modifier. Okay? Warrior of Shadow. You can move the field of darkness you create. The feature also gives you dark vision, or upgrades yours if you have it. As you level up, your level 11 improved Shadow Step allows you to spend a focus point to ignore the dim light or darkness restriction of Shadow Step and make an unarmed strike immediately after you teleport as part of the same bonus action. And Cloak of Shadows is the new level 17 feature that allows you to wreathe yourself in shadows. It lasts for a minute if you're incapacitated or if you end your turn in bright light. While active, you have the invisible condition, which persists even if you attack or cast a spell. Reminder that invisible is giving you flat-out advantage on attack rolls. You can move through occupied spaces as if difficult terrain, and Flurry of Blows no longer requires focus points to use. Warrior of the Elements has had the most changes. Elemental Attunement now gives you 10-foot reach on your unarmed strikes, and deals your choice of acid, cold, fire, lightning, or thunder damage. Based on the fact that it says 10-foot reach for your unarmed strike, whoever was asking before about shoves or grapples, it does appear that based on that, you could grapple somebody 10 feet away with Warrior of the Elements ability. So you could hold somebody out at 10-foot range or shove them 10 feet away. You know, shove them and move up, shove them again. You could also push or pull a target 10 feet on a failed save. So even then, you have extra on top of that, on top of just the general unarmed striking improvements. On top of that, you have the new Elementalism cantrip. As you level up, you get the ability to create AoE elemental bursts, fun ways to navigate the battlefield, and damage resistance to aid survivability. Notice nowhere in here do they say weapon mastery. So officially, the monks do not have weapon mastery as a base class feature. However, they have mentioned that there will be feats that will allow you to gain weapon mastery. So that might be the way you do that. Stunning strike. Okay, this is all pretty much... Oh, we skipped open hand like an idiot. Open hand technique remains largely unchanged with the exception of one of its options only blocking opportunity attacks rather than all reactions. Wholeness of body has been moved to a bonus action and now heals a number of hit points equal to a roll of your martial arts die plus your wisdom modifier rather than 3 times your monk level. However, you can use it a number of times equal to your wisdom modifier per long rest rather than just once. The new Fleet Step feature allows you to use Step of the Wind as part of any bonus action that wasn't already used to perform Step of the Wind. And Quivering Palm has been rebalanced. It now costs 4 focus points and does 10d12 force damage on a failed save, rather than reducing the target to 0 hit points and half on a success. 10d12 force damage is still a decent amount of damage. Also, it says when you can use Step of the Wind when you use any other bonus action. So I guess you could drink a potion and use Step of the Wind. You could use your Wholeness of Body and Step of the Wind. In a weird scenario, you could use Patient Defense and Step of the Wind to get dash, disengage, and dodge all at once if you wanted to. You also could Flurry of Blows and Step of the Wind. So Flurry of Blows, get the extra movement. There's a lot of cool options you could do with that. I really like it. I think that's pretty much all of the things. They do recommend the boon of Irresistible Offense as your epic boon. Increase your strength or dexterity score by 1. Next bludgeoning, piercing, slashing damage you deal always ignores resistance. Additionally, when you roll a 20 on attack roll, you deal additional damage equal to the ability score. You can deal additional damage equal to the ability score you increased with this feat. So if you have like a 25 dexterity, you could do 25 extra points. That's pretty cool. So there you go, folks. We came in right on time, basically, on the hour mark here. And, yeah. Here's the thing, though. Well, epic boons are... everybody gets the epic boons at level 19. So, you know, if you don't use it, you're ignoring a class feature that's useful. You all said it. Look at the changes they made to the monk. It is effectively a new class, right? There are through lines of things that were still present from back in the day. Same thing with the subclasses. But a lot of it is so fundamentally changed that it's basically a new class. Where was the person designing the monk when they worked on the ranger? Like... and this is one, like, I know people have also been, I've seen it a lot in the comments, where people are getting really pissed where they just refer to Atasha's Cauldron feature as a whole new feature. And I think no video is more egregious in that than the Ranger. But the Monk, it's like, again, having played Monks in the past, I recognize that Monks had some issues. I still kind of feel like Monks should be a D10 hit die, not a D8, because they kind of fall into that warrior category. And that warrior category is basically 3 D10s and a D12 class. In my opinion, like the fighters. Because like giving them the D8 kind of makes me feel like they fit more into like the caster / skill monkey group. And they are very much not that. So That's fine. It's not a huge deal. They gave them a lot more survivability and options, so I have no complaints there. But it is just a fundamentally better class in every way. Things that I didn't really like, things that I kind of maybe didn't take for granted, because like it was just like I recognize one of the biggest things with monks was the point economy, right? You'd spend all your points to do base features, then you have no points to do your cool things when the time comes. They've given you more ways to use your points, more things that you can do without expending points, boosted damage overall, just everything is just better in almost every way. And the few things that they nerfed, I think everybody, from what I saw, everybody in the comments and here in the chat is in agreement that the things that they nerfed were in need of a nerf. So it wasn't even like people are like up in arms about the changes to Stunning Strike. Everybody's like, no, I kind of get it. You know, I'm down for those changes because the changes kind of fit what's going on. So I don't know. I think that I'm a huge fan of these monk changes. It'll definitely be a fun exercise to update the classes, the subclasses that didn't make it into the player's handbook, to update those to fit into this, because there's a lot of cool things. For example, like Drunken Master Monk, part of one of its early abilities is basically useless, which is something that I feel like they, maybe will have to address, because didn't like one of Drunken Master Monk's abilities, like when you take the Flurry of Blows action, you can take, or maybe it's not useless, but you take Flurry of Blows, you can take like Step of the Wind. But now like Open Hand Monk can kind of do that too. So like, I don't know. But yeah, it is generally an overall really fun thing to see. I can't wait to do the updates. I also am very excited about what the outpouring of new homebrew subclasses will be based on the updates to the base monk. Like, I feel like there was always a lot of cool things that people did, but I also feel like people had this kind of stigma around the monk and didn't really like it that much, or thought it was too underpowered. So like people turned away from it, and now with these changes, it is very much not the case. So you might see more interesting subclass design from homebrewers because they're more interested in the base class. Because right, the class has to catch you and like hook you for you to want to develop subclasses for it. Dragon Master Monk is not going to be in the new video. They covered them all in here. It's Mercy, Elements, Shadow, Open Hand. But like I said, Drunken Master would be cool because like you might have to tweak some of the features, basically almost giving them a whole new feature, I think. So I've already done a video covering all of the subclasses that will be in this book. I actually filmed the video that was going to be all the subclasses that didn't make it into this book, and I completely spaced on the Critical Role book, so I have to reshoot that video to include like the Echo Knight and the Graviturgy and Chronergy Wizard. So I will do that video probably tonight and release it either later tonight or tomorrow. So just remind you of what's out there that didn't get updated, and then things that will take the time over the next coming months to update to come in line and in parity with 2024 base classes, as well as the other 2024 subclasses. So anyway, tomorrow I think is the Cleric. Is that what tomorrow is? So it's either the Cleric or the Bard. Let's find out. Tomorrow's Sorcerer. Wow, I'm totally off. Sorry. Tomorrow is the Sorcerer. So I will hopefully be around and able to do that video right around noontime when it goes live. That'll obviously depend on what's going on with work. But if I'm able to, I will gladly do those videos. So anyway, I'm going to end this here because I got to go get the kids. But thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.